Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Welcome to the C.L. Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L. tonight. C.L. is in Washington doing Freedom Works, and I'm in the studio with Michelle. And today's kind of an interesting day. Michelle, the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And the day that the Japanese attacked, there were over 1,200 soldiers killed on the Arizona alone. And it started us into a world war that lasted some 5 years. My father happened to be at LSU at the time. He had already received his ROTC commission, but was too young to serve, and he wrote President Roosevelt and asked for permission to go on and serve, and ultimately Roosevelt allowed him to do that, and he served in the Pacific Theater.
Now, wait a minute. Your dad was at LSU as a student. This would have been 1941.
1941, yes.
And if it was January, maybe after, it could have been January of 42. And he wrote to the president.
Correct.
And the president wrote him back?
It ended up, he got orders to report, but my father started LSU on his 15th birthday. And so he graduated.
He was smarter than you.
Yes, he was. He graduated at age 19, and because he was in ROTC, received his commission as a second lieutenant. But you had to be 21 in order to serve. So then he went on and began his master's at LSU. And in the meantime, when the war broke out, he petitioned the president to allow him to go on and report for active duty, and ultimately got his orders. And typical Army, my father, his undergraduate degree was in petroleum engineering. So, of course, the Army put him in the Corps of Engineers, had him building bridges. My father could not hammer a nail with a hammer. But he got the book and realized how to build bridges, and so his entire career in the war, he was on the front lines building bridges so the troops could advance. He served in Leyte.
Where is that?
It's in the out of the Philippines in the Pacific Theater. Was in Manila for a while, and it's interesting. I'm glad my father is not around to see the press secretary of the United States at the White House saying that it's time for everybody who was at Pearl Harbor to get over their bitterness. My father to his dying day would not drive a Japanese car. Was upset at my wife and my mother, who both had Japanese cars. He said, "You don't realize those people tried to kill me for 4 years, and I'm not driving their vehicles." But
which is an interesting point of view, and he earned that point of view because they tried to kill him.
Yeah.
I was not alive at that time, and they didn't try to kill me. I think the big thing that's come out of all of these conversations, Josh Earnest misspeaking, and today the survivors. I mean, it is one of the last times. This is a symbolic history of it because they're still alive. 100 years from now, and even 5 years from now, they may not be alive because they're 90 years old. One of them's 104. I mean, it's been a long time. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Now, what do you think about the Prime Minister of Japan?
Well, obviously we have mended fences since then, and as one of the, I forget who I was listening to today, but they were talking about Japan is now our ally. However, a lot of folks don't realize Japan since World War II has been building their armed forces back up. I mean, their Navy is now one of the strongest navies in the world. So,
I don't think they're planning on attacking us anytime. So
well,
that threat is not there.
I understand. But
and I hope that they can protect themselves. It's a very interesting dynamic. The world changes. I think what Josh Earnest should have said is that things changed. In America, there's a feud that people forgot about between the Hatfields and the McCoys. And that isn't a fable. That's a true story, isn't it?
It is a true story. You're talking about my ancestors now.
That's right, because your middle name
is Hatfield.
True story. This is real. Jay, this is real. True story.
My grandmother's maiden name, she was a Hatfield. And, it was the Hatfields and the McCoys fought for years in the hills of West Virginia. It all started over a theoretically somebody stole a pig, and then one of the Hatfield boys wanted to marry a McCoy girl, or vice versa. I'm not sure, but anyway, it was a feud that went on for years and years, and finally the National Guard had to be called in to
break it up.
So
the moral to this story is we want to remember. I think some of the things that came out today, the fact that young people don't understand what Pearl Harbor is, that it's not just another day, that we were viciously attacked in Hawaii. When people go to the museum, there's moving stories online even today.
If you ever have a chance to go to Pearl Harbor and go out on the memorial and you can look down and see the Arizona from the memorial, and it's very touching. And it was interesting. There were just as many, if not more, Japanese tourists there as there were American tourists when we were there.
And I'm sure that the Japanese people are not wanting to attack America. And what happened then and the world dynamic then is not the world dynamic today. Italy, Germany, Japan, their leaders were dictators. Oh, kind of like Fidel Castro, just saying.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people that viciously attack people, and maybe like ISIS, who are terrorists. But the people in Japan today are not wanting to attack us. They're wanting to defend themselves. I mean, China, the beautiful Chinese people 75 years ago needed our help. They were innocent. You know, that scenario may have changed. So I think the lesson is about diplomacy. It's a small planet. We can't be fighting with everyone. And we have to find a way to work together in the world to bring about peace. But you can never change where dictators won't rise up and try to start wars. I mean, how do you neutralize that?
Well, one way you neutralize that is by making sure that everyone has a good economy. I mean, people won't rise up if they have jobs. I mean, you look at what's going on in the Middle East, and we've talked about that for a long time, where half of the folks in Egypt and Saudi Arabia and all the Middle Eastern countries are unemployed. And so the civil unrest, the spring of unrest in Egypt came about strictly because nobody has jobs. And that's what's so interesting as we're going into the President-elect Trump's inauguration with some of the ideas that he has, and we'll get into that as we go into the break. But it's an exciting time to be in America today, and I look forward to the inauguration coming up in January. This is Mike Woods. I'm sitting in for C.L. Bryant, and we will be back after the break. Welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for CL, who is in Washington, D.C., and I have Michelle here in the studio telling me what to do.
That's right, bossing you around. But we were talking during the break, and I think the important thing we need to talk about, because your father served in World War II, my husband's father did as well. The men and women who died at Pearl Harbor, the men and women who fought during World War II, did it for the reason to bring about peace. They dreamt about the day, 75 years into the future, when the Prime Minister from Japan was going to visit that Pearl Harbor memorial and say, this should never happen again. You don't fight those wars to have eternal feuds. Only the Hatfields and McCoys do that. But countries like ours, the peace-loving Americans that want to bring peace to the planet, do that, go in harm's way to bring about peace. So it's actually, isn't this in your dad's honor that they're doing this 75 years later?
Well, no question, and you know, and that's a great point. I mean, nobody wants to go to war, and remember, we didn't start the war. We just, as the at the encouragement of our President Roosevelt, you know, we rose to the occasion to defend our shores, and ended up even the Japanese admiral,
I'll help you.
Said after the attack, he said, you know, yes, we took them by surprise, but we're going to regret it in 6 months. And in 6 months, the battle at Midway occurred, where they lost a great number of their battleships. So,
well, we've got a caller on. He's a military. His name is Paul. Paul, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, I was saying earlier when you guys were talking about, like, Pearl Harbor and the Japanese people and all that, I was active duty Air Force for like 10 years. And one of my first duty stations right out of technical school was Yokota Air Base, Japan, where I was, you know, right there in Tokyo, and I was stationed there for about 3 years. And it was just, I thought a kind of interesting little tidbit for y'all was while I was over there, I had Japanese people like my own age, you know, coming up to me and apologizing me for, like, Pearl Harbor attack in World War II. And I'm like, I told them, I said, you have nothing to apologize for. You weren't alive then. I wasn't alive then. You know, why are you apologizing to me? But, you know, they were all just great people. I don't think anybody there would ever want to, you know, see animosity between our two countries.
Well, and that's a tremendous point, you know, and a lot of folks don't realize the lives that were lost not only on the American side, but, you know, I mean, the bombing of the 2 atom bombs that were dropped.
Exactly, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, you know, there were great losses on both sides, and so hopefully we have learned that, you know, it's better to go in peace than to go in war.
Exactly.
Well, we appreciate your service, Paul, and we appreciate your phone call. And I love that you shared that personal story so that our listeners who might feel a little bit of animosity, because I really think that Josh Ernest's comment, once again, stirs up, you know, people to get angry. But we really want to diffuse that and remind people that there are good people all over the, you know, even in the Middle East. Not every Muslim is not a terrorist, and it's sad that the victims, the innocent Muslim victims in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like also goes back to like with Germany during the war. See, my mother was born July 8th, 1938 in Augsburg, Germany. So imagine what she lived through as a small child.
Wow.
And, you know, it's like, I'm always thankful for like the people who, you know, went in on the D-Day invasion and all that, because if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't even be here today.
You'd be sprechen Sie Deutsch.
9.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you for your service, Paul.
Thank you.
You know, as we talk about the Japanese, there's been the Japanese have been in the press also, not only the Prime Minister, but Masayoshi Son, who is the founder.
Say that again 3 times fast.
Masayoshi Son is a billionaire founder and CEO of Japan SoftBank, and he made news yesterday by saying that he is going to bring $50 billion investment into the United States, as well as 50,000 employees. So at a time that we're celebrating or remembering Pearl Harbor Day, the Japanese are getting ready to bring in a $50 billion investment. And it's been interesting, Michelle, and we talked before the show, since Donald Trump was elected, there has been $1 trillion in value added to the stock market. The stock market hit another record high today. We are up over 1,200 points since the election of President-elect Trump. And all of the terrible things that all the talking heads said were going to happen haven't happened. So it's interesting when you have someone, you look at what Trump has done already with Carrier, with Ford. He's telling Boeing that maybe you need to cut back the price of Air Force One and look at some things. And people forget that for the first time, and I can't even, I guess you could say that Bush 43 was in business. I mean, he was a part owner of the Rangers. But really, you have to go back to, I guess, Herbert Hoover.
But you're saying about a businessman.
To have a businessman in the presidential Oval Office.
We've been calling for that forever. I mean, Ross Perot was a businessman. Everybody you talk to around the country talks about we need a businessman as president. Romney was going to be that guy. And, President-elect Trump's only been president-elect for a few weeks, and he's already acting like a businessman. But, Mike, you and I both know he ran his campaign like a businessman.
And he was unconventional, and that's what a lot of
He was always lean. He was always looking for the cost effectiveness of everything. These are the exact problems wrong in Washington. The other day he was in Ohio, and the motorcade prevented him from getting to his speaking engagement. And he said, we got to make some changes. He is such an outsider. It's like Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
And the amazing thing to me, Michelle, here is a billionaire that is being just surrounded by just the common guy on the street. We'll talk about it after the break, but he's got a rally Friday in Baton Rouge for John Kennedy. But he was at Fort Bragg last night. Every place he goes, he is being the halls are packed.
Well, that's what it was like even before. That's how he won Michigan, and he's going to Michigan again Friday as well. It's a thank you tour.
Well, and what a novel idea. But just look at what he's done already. He hadn't even gotten in office yet, and look what's happening. I'm excited about when he finally does get to office. So anyway, this is Mike Woods. We'll be back in a minute after the break. CL is in Washington, D.C. working for FreedomWorks, but Michelle and I'll be back in a minute. Thanks. Welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show. This is Mike Woods sitting in for C.L. Bryant, and I'm here with Michelle in the studio. Michelle, another interesting thing in the news, and we continue over the weekend. The Obama administration decided at the last minute to shut down the Dakota pipeline, and there's a great article by Jim Cramer, who is a Republican congressman from North Dakota. I'm sorry, Kevin Cramer. I'm thinking of Seinfeld. Anyway, Kevin Cramer.
You just could not get that off your mind.
I couldn't. But anyway, Kevin points out some interesting things in today's Wall Street Journal. That first of all, this isn't about tribal rights. It doesn't even cross any of the Standing Rock Sioux tribal land.
Now, is he a congressman from that district?
He is. I don't know how many congressmen are in North Dakota, but there can't be that many. He represents North Dakota in the U.S. House, so I would assume that this is.
Well, and they're
his
probably
district.
Their land isn't even so yeah.
Yeah, and of course,
Right.
they're Indian land, so it's not even federal land. They've already been through 2 federal courts that rejected claims that the tribe wasn't consulted, so that argument's out. Other tribes and parties did participate. More than 50 tribes were consulted, and as a result of their concerns, there were 140 adjustments to the route of the pipeline. This isn't about water protection because the government has been working with the Sioux Standing Rock tribe to move their water intake already. And so what, in effect, you are doing in shutting the pipeline down is that we will now continue to truck and by rail car over the water sources that they're concerned about, move crude oil. So it's just
let's qualify this too for our listeners. You're in the oil business, but you also have an environmental master's degree on purpose to learn about how to drill safely in the United States, respecting the environment. Now, we know that the EPA has over-regulated things and has become extreme and unrealistic. And that's what we're talking about here. It isn't that you hate the environment. And a lot of people get this picture of the 1950s, 1940s Republican that did not care about the environment and pollution or people that worked for them. That's not who you are. You're not that angry, rich Republican guy that hates everyone.
That's portrayed by Hollywood and TV.
Yes.
No, and it's going to be interesting. And the Attorney General from Oklahoma is going to be the new head of the Environmental Protection Agency. And of course, you all know what's going on in Oklahoma with all the drilling activity, and so he has been throughout his service as Attorney General in Oklahoma very critical of the EPA. And one of the things that President-elect Trump promises to do is to deregulate business. And I think that's why you're seeing the market go crazy. I think that's why you're suddenly seeing people like from Japan and other places coming in and wanting to do business here, but with lower tax rates and less regulations. But
and it's not something, just for our listeners to understand, it doesn't mean we're going to abuse the environment. But when you cannot water your lettuce in California because of some random species of something, because
in the San Francisco
I'm not
Bay,
a scientist,
yes.
but I know for certain that things go extinct on our planet.
Well,
it's not the end of the world.
It was interesting. I don't know if you saw the missive that went out today, but because the weather is changing drastically, we have a Canadian cold front moving in. In fact, it's going to be in the 20s here tomorrow night.
Snow?
It's not going to snow here, but it's going to be cold.
Well, we could pretend, though, if you turn your hose on and it's 20 degrees, I call that snow.
You'll be cold. But the protesters up there are frantically calling for propane and gasoline because of the cold weather. And
this is Jordan Charton. And then Jacqueline Keeler reposted it, and they're saying this is, it's on Facebook, and they're saying they're part of all the people at Standing Rock that are, Standing Rock is the hashtag here, and they're urgently asking. It says it. We need here Standing Rock propane truck, hundreds of cases of water, unleaded fuel truck to refill gas station, a snow plow to pave the road. So it's the partnership between progress and the environment. Like you also said, there's these protests at local restaurants here, which we won't name, but those
they
people
cook all their food with natural gas.
With natural
that
gas.
comes through pipelines.
Or it's just like Al Gore flying around and all these elitists, including Hillary Clinton, flying around all the time pretending to care about the environment. What I respect, Mike, is somebody who says, I want to do this and rides a bicycle. I don't want to be the person to ride a bike, and I like cars, but if you're going to say one thing, let your actions back it up.
Well, and so many of those that joined in some of these protests, we were out in New Mexico back when they were
Well,
protesting.
you have a house in New Mexico.
Yes, and we were out there, and there was a big protest going on because there was a big gas play going on in the Santa Fe Basin. And I remember talking to a shop owner as my wife was looking at Christmas gifts, and when she asked me what I did, and I said, well, I'm in the oil and gas business, and her comment was, well, you're not here to drill in the basin, are you? And I said, no, I'm not crazy enough to do business in New Mexico, but I said, just out of curiosity, where do you think the heat from this building comes from?
Oh, good
and
for
she
you.
said, oh, well, we don't burn hydrocarbons, we burn propane.
And you said,
And
what do you
so I
think that
then
is?
spent the next 20 minutes
Educating
explaining
her.
to her that, propane is a hydrocarbon derivative. It comes from natural gas.
Natural gas.
And
Even I know that. I'm not a
the
scientist.
very thing that you're protesting against. And then, interestingly enough, that summer or that winter, it became extremely cold. There were rolling electrical blackouts, and the gas supply into Taos and other cities was shut off. And I mean, for like a
what
week.
is interesting to us, before we come up to a hard break, is that the price of oil has gone up. Our budget is based on that in Louisiana. And now we're going to have Larry Bagley on. He was in Appropriations Committee meetings today, which is the money committees. People are saying, oh, my gosh, down in Baton Rouge, we need more money next year.
Just another $600 million. We're looking at, we ended the fiscal year last year with a $300 million shortfall. And yesterday, Jay Darden testified before Appropriations that we're another $300 million short. So I look forward to visiting with Larry after the break and get his perspective as we go into the new year as to how we're going to make up the difference, because everybody wants more money. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back after the break.
There must be some kind of way out of here. Say the joker to the thief. There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief. Businessman there, drink my wine.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L., and we have on the phone State Representative Larry Bagley from the 7th District of Louisiana. Larry has spent the last 3 days at appropriation meetings in Baton Rouge, and yesterday Jay Darden was the Grinch that stole Christmas and told us that we don't have a $300 million problem, we have a $600 million problem. So other than that, Larry, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you. I'm driving back in. I'm on the Chapel Bridge now, trying to get back, and it's certainly pretty crowded. Everybody leaving, going the other way, but everything's good.
Well, again, appreciate what you do and appreciate your service. Well, what's your take on what you're hearing from the commissioner?
Well, I'm gonna lead with my first comment, and pretty much sums up all of it, is that we just got out of a presidential election that we're all aware of, and we saw a man that said he's going to cut taxes and put people back to work and do away with some of the programs that are not beneficial to Americans. And he won a victory when he wasn't supposed to. I never thought he could win, although I voted for him and even put signs out and all that. And then we have another guy, the other candidate, talked about abortions and raising taxes and all that, and expanding the government, and that side didn't win. So when we look at when they come to us and talk to us about expanding and doing other things and asking for more money,
it's just not the climate for that, is it? Well, and Larry, they would say to you that was a national election, but Louisiana.
People spoke last. When we ran an amendment, we tried to. The governor tried to get an amendment to cut the income tax credit for corporations, which next year it was going to be on us, and it failed miserably. So, I mean, we've got all kind of signs of what the people want, and that's what we're all elected to do.
So you're saying the people don't want you to go to Baton Rouge in session in 2017 and raise taxes. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you're right. I'm saying that they want us to be mindful of their money. They are like, I'm not sure, Michelle, and I'm not going to say never, because I don't, you never know. But I do know this, that there's always a chance there might be something somewhere that might need to be done. An emergency situation, when I went in, that was what we were, $3 billion down, and we had 2 weeks to solve it. And of course, not knowing any more than I did, that was the only way I saw. I've seen a little bit.
I think
more
you had
now.
gotten elected on a Saturday and were in session pretty much on Sunday. But Mike,
Right.
You're in the oil business, and you talk about it every time on the show about how our budget, our state revenue is tied to the price of the barrel of oil.
Yes, for every dollar that the crude oil goes up, that's an additional $12 million to the state for the year. And I believe, Larry, this year's budget is predicated on $30 crude oil. Am I correct with that number?
I think that's what it is.
Well, the good news is today at crude, Louisiana crude closed at about $45 a barrel. So,
there's a surplus.
I just looked at a little piece in the Freeport Times from today. I have it on. Now we do it online. And it has $50 a barrel for this month. Next month is $53, and then in February it's $52 in the futures market. So, I mean, I think natural gas is $3.60. It's been $3 in a long time.
Well, it's actually posted price right now, or our futures price, is $3.60. So natural gas is really moving. Of course, it's wintertime, and it usually jumps at that time.
Well, it's wintertime, and really, kind of like me, I think. I have been so optimistic, and I've talked to Michelle about this and others. I've been so optimistic since after the election, because I see that we have help. I had really gotten to the point that I wasn't sure how much longer we could go like that, where we continued to do the things that we did in the federal government and spent money, and there was no end to it, and from what we heard, that was what was going to happen for another 8 years. And, I was just, when I saw what happened, and since that time I've been super optimistic about the future of not only the oil business, which I have a little interest in too, but all business, my personal business, everything. and the stock market's gone up and maintained. Of course, it'll make a bottom here. That's the way it works. But the fact that it's gone up normally never grows up when a Republican nominated. Historically, it's always made its big pushes when a Democrat was elected. I used to teach that a long time ago. So,
I was going to say, you taught economics, didn't you?
Yes, yes. So I understand how it's supposed to work.
Well, the market has increased $1 trillion in value since Trump was elected, and the Dow is up 1,200 points. And, of course, everyone was predicting these dire consequences. The world was coming to an end. Oh, woe is me. And here we have somebody who's going to do what? Lower our taxes and remove regulations. A novel idea.
And, Larry, our listeners want to ask you this question. Remember, you're an economics professor. Mike Woods knows a little bit about the economy. Let's talk about the carrier deal in Ohio. What do you think about that deal? Because there may have been some reckless Republicans that said it was crony capitalism. Mike has told me what he thinks about that being absurd. What do you think about it?
Well, now you're talking about, when you say that, let me be sure we were talking the same subject, where they got carrier air conditioners stay in the area and do that.
Yes.
I mean, I just listened. I just turned CNN off before. When you call, I turn it off because I listen to it now. I'm sorry, not CNN, but Fox. I listen to both of them because I like to get opposing opinions too. But they were talking about the George Will, who is pretty conservative, talked about that was socialism. When the president gets on the phone and make individual deals with corporations, that's socialism. And they tied it to, or compared it to what they've all done since he started being elected, is the Nazis and Hitler. Hitler was Man of the Year in '36, and I think Trump is this year.
Now, this is Fox News that was saying this. This is George Will.
This is, I'm listening to Fox. Yes.
Well, Mike is a lifetime Republican. I've been involved for 20 years in the Republican Party, and I'm just going to say that's absurd. George Will didn't get anybody elected. He didn't have a candidate that was going to be president. Donald Trump, fortunately for us, was wearing a Republican jersey when he got elected. But people like George Will and anybody else that's coming out saying this ridiculous, nitpicky stuff. And we're going to keep you on and talk with you more after this break about this. But, Mike, what is your first reaction to that comment?
Well, George Will, your candidate lost. And Michelle, you started out supporting someone else. I did. CL did. A lot of us did. But in the end, we all jumped on the Trump bandwagon because we had hope and encouragement that he would turn this country around, and he hadn't even gotten in office yet.
Reduce the size of government. And we're going to, because it's so easy to make these big headlines that, oh, Hitler did that. He was Man of the Year, and he called people. Well, Donald Trump didn't say, I'm writing an executive order and making law. He said, what can I do? I can't just sit here on my hands like politicians do. And he calls the guy up, and he says, look, dude, what can we do? And
I bet the 1,100 jobs, the 1,100 families whose jobs were saved at Christmas time don't think of it as socialism.
I don't think that Hitler was giving a bunch of Germans a bunch of jobs.
Well,
he was taking stuff from the Jews. But anyway.
Because I taught history also. It's much different then. And there's really no comparison. They can't say those kind of things because there's nothing that correlates those two events. I'll just say that I thought Donald Trump going after jobs to help those people, that's what he said he'd do. When he ran, I promised you going to get jobs, and he's done that now. Maybe it's not the way everybody else has done, and maybe it's a little different. I don't know. I just know that he's putting money back in the pockets of Americans to live and earn and making people proud. And as long as he does that, not for me to say he's right or wrong. I'm loving it. I'm living the dream right now.
Well, it's what he's done all of his life, Larry. I mean, and he did the same thing for the Ford employees in St. Louis, and as well as the carrier employees, and he's going after other folks to try to save jobs. We've got Larry Bagley on the phone, 7th District, Louisiana State Rep, been in Baton Rouge for the last few days dealing with appropriations, and we're going to have him on after the break to talk a little more about the state of the great state of Louisiana. This is Mike Woods sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for CL, and I'm in the studio with Michelle, and we have State Rep Larry Bagley from the 7th District on the phone. Larry has spent the last couple of days in Baton Rouge. You know, a lot of folks don't realize our elected officials aren't just in Baton Rouge during session. There are committee meetings that go on throughout the year, and Larry, you're probably down there just about as much when it's not in session than when you are in session, I would imagine.
Well, not quite as much, but I normally am here at least a day or two a week. I've put a lot of miles on my truck since I took this job, and so it's more than a part-time job. Yeah. Tell
the listening audience, you serve on appropriations. Exactly what do you appropriate?
Well, what our job is everybody here lately. What we've been doing is all the groups, all the departments, from the governor down to the maintenance staff, comes before us and tells us what their budget is, shows it to us, what their budget is, how much they want to increase or decrease their budget, where their money comes from, their stat debt amount is, and what they want to spend money on. If they're asking for an increase, they enumerate what they're going to do. Now, we also ask them questions prior to the meeting to let us know kind of what some specific questions about, did they let people go? If they let people go, how many? Did they give any raises? That sort of thing. Because they're not supposed to give any raises. There certainly are some that did, because we could figure that out, because the amount of money we spent right after the election, right after it started, the employee salaries have gone up. So we know there's been some money spent. I asked yesterday Ben Nevers, who is the governor's chief of staff, they had found, I believe it was, and I might be wrong about this, the number, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 in bad contracts that they had redone, and some other issues that they had saved. And then on the other side of his budget, he'd asked for a $400,000 increase in appropriation. And I asked Ben, why, if you save $500,000, are we going to try to get another $400,000? Where'd the $500,000 go? I never got an answer to that. And several of the members privately said, he never answered you. Do we have any idea where it is? I said, no, that's why I asked the question.
So in this appropriations meeting, so that's about accountability. And our listeners, but let's take that specific thing. So this is the governor's office. They bring you some spreadsheets. Is it actually in spreadsheet format where you have this item, $500,000 savings, and it was bad contracts? What do you mean bad contracts?
Well, they just said one of them, Ben went through that. One of them, one of the bigger ones, was a contract that they renegotiated. It was something they were doing, and they renegotiated it, and they got it dropped.
And they got a cost savings. And sometimes, Larry, pressure on people will make them go back and do that. And I think what our callers, we got a lot of calls during the break, people having questions, and a lot of it is about that. What is the fat? What is the unnecessary things that are in the budget? And this guy, we don't know if that's all they could get. What if they revisited all the contracts that they have? I know that Treasurer Kennedy was talking about looking at contracts that are unnecessary, and why are we paying for services that are outside of the government realm anyway, and things like that. So,
well, to explain to I know that a lot of times the listeners don't really understand what all that means, and I'm going to give you a little short course here. The reason for the contracts in the first place was when Governor Jindal was there, and they did the private-public partnership, and they went to public. In other words, let's say the maintenance people at the hospital, where they had been state employees, they let them go and rehired them again. Well, what they had to do is they signed a contract with these people to do the work. So those are a lot of the contracts. They're just the same thing we had before, but they're just in a different format.
Yeah, and so was there a cost savings to take them out of the government?
Not really at the end. Well, the cost savings was it got them out of the
got them out of civil service.
Civil service and the retirement system, and that was and the health care stuff.
And that would take it
so
off
did
of the
save us-
state budget.
It did save us money. Yeah,
And
it saved
a
us
lot
money.
of people feel like Governor Jindal, as a Republican, did that for reasons that were not good for Louisiana, but that looked good on his record. Is that true, Mike?
Well,
Go ahead.
you know, one of the things, and Governor Jindal came up with the idea of privatization primarily when he served as head of the UL system, and we were charged at the time to come up with some cost savings methods, and it's no coincidence that we converted all of our bookstores to Barnes and Noble, because Barnes and Noble's in the business of selling books, and we shouldn't have been. It's no coincidence that all the food services went to Aramark and Marriott, because they do food for a living, and we didn't. So
there's a time when it makes sense. But wasn't the governor heavy-handed in this? Like, he did it across the board, like maintenance? Larry, you're down there. Is that you weren't in government when Bobby Jindal did this, but a lot of the people on that appropriations committee with you were there when Jindal did put these measures forth.
Right, and they'll tell you now that some of these things that they pressured them to do was not good government.
Well, look at the example of the hospital up here. I mean, thousands,
Right.
a 1,000-page contract with blank pages, and don't worry about it, we'll fill in the blanks later.
And that hospital at one time was paying the hospital was paying the medical school $60 million a year. That was what they paid them, and then once that was through, now they know about that how it is now. So,
yeah.
It's but anytime you make a change, Mike, y'all know this. There's going to be some tough times too, and it's to be expected. And in the long run, if it works, I'm not sure that the public-private deal is going to work all the way. But I know in specific cases, it certainly worked well. Others maybe not as well. The way it is.
Larry, we're coming up on a break. We'd like to keep you for one more segment and kind of talk about what is the mood in Baton Rouge. What do you think is going to happen as we go into the new year? So,
sure.
Okay, appreciate it. Talking with Larry Bagley, 7th District State Rep, Louisiana. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. This is Mike Woods, sitting in the studio with Michelle.
Rouge, this song right here, listen. Dazed and Confused, Led Zeppelin. Is that what they're playing down in Baton Rouge, Larry?
They're not playing it, but they are singing it.
Well, Larry, you've gone through 2 days of this, and you know, as we come in, when does the next legislative session occur?
We go back in session in April, but now we'll be back down there. I'll turn right back around and go back down there next Wednesday. We'll have a session on Wednesday, and then Friday the joint budget, which is all the budgetary people from the Senate and the House. So it'll be all the members of the appropriations plus the money people from the Senate. So it'll be a large group of us in there for those days. So it'll be 2 more. We got 2 more days before Christmas.
And this is an odd year this year, so we can't raise revenue in an odd year, can we?
Well, we go coming in when we go into 17, there'll be plenty of taxes shot at us.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
Well, how do you think that's going to fly? I mean, what's the mood of your fellow Republicans sitting there?
I think Mike, I could ask you the same thing. What's the mood of the people that you know? I mean, I live in the same area. I think that I really think the problem is that we've asked for tax money before, and we don't have a specific thing to do with it. And I know like they're pushing the gas tax. They're saying 23 cents. I know I went to a meeting the other day by a guy who's telling me that, Larry, y'all have got to get some money for these roads, or they're going to fall out from under you. The bridges are more than 30 years old, and they're only built in the last 30 years.
But isn't that money that we already approved?
Well, we've
Exactly,
approved, but we don't spend it all on roads and bridges. That's the problem.
So that accountability. I mean, Larry, what the mood is, I'll tell you what the mood is in Louisiana. Why is that the case? Who is making these decisions, and who's so flippant, like the person from the governor's office that showed you a $500,000 savings and then asked for $400,000 more? There's no accountability. How can you have money for roads and not use it for roads?
And I asked that same question to John Froder, who has been there. This is his 3rd term, and he gave me the same answer I'm going to give you. I'm not sure, because who has in statute, we passed a 4-cent tax. I just found about this. I don't remember the name of it, but it was like 15 years ago. They passed a 4-cent tax, and I think it was only a few of the parishes that have to pay it. But he said in Covington, down that area where he lives in St. Tammany, they have never done one thing. They were supposed to do some bridges and roads and things like that. Never spent one dime on it. They still pay it. Not one thing they've ever asked for. Because I was mentioning the fact, if there was a tax, it'd have to be appropriated for a certain thing. He said, look, Larry, they're not going to, you can appropriate it whatever you want to. It's probably not going to go for that. And there's not any way, even when you put it in the Constitution, it's they find a way to get around it. I'm not sure how to happen. Again, I'm new. I've been in it a year. He's been in it 11. At some point, I guess I'll figure it out. But right now, I don't know.
Now, you've been good friends. Before we let you go, we need to talk about your good friend and our good friend, Mike Johnson. He was down there with you. You're hoping that he won't be back in Baton Rouge. What are you hoping to happen?
Well, actually, Michelle, to be honest, I'm desperately want him to win, but I am certainly going to miss him in Baton Rouge. I do. I will miss him. I wish he had a clone. He doesn't. I've tried to help him as much as I can. I've been to several functions with him, sat with him at tables, and that sort of thing. The people have asked me about. I have a lot of people call and say, "Well, so what do you need to do?" And I've told them what I thought. If they're Republican, you need to vote for them.
I don't care if you're not a Republican, vote for him.
Well, it amazes me, Larry, and the old country western song, "The girls always get pretty at closing time." The Democrats always get conservative at election time, and both the Democratic candidate for Congress here in the 4th Congressional District and the Democratic candidate for Senate, both are saying, "Oh, but look at me, I can work across the aisle and I can do this and I can do that and I get along with everybody." And the bottom line is that as a Democrat in Washington, if you're in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi speaks for you. So if that's who we want,
you're exactly right.
If that's who we want, then vote for the Democrat. And on the Senate side, it was Harry Reid. Harry's gone, and now it's Chuck Schumer. So if you want Chuck Schumer to speak for you in Louisiana, but here's the facts. We have a Republican president, we have a Republican Senate, and a Republican House. Why would we not want to send 2 more Republicans to Washington, D.C.?
Exactly. And if you've got and I told one of the candidates, I won't mention which one, but one of them talked to me about all that, and he said, I'll do exactly what, I'll be just like you. I said, no, you won't, because I'm going to vote conservative. He said, I would too. I said, if you vote conservative, the Democrats will never put you on a committee.
So a Democrat candidate said that to you, but you had told me you wanted to kind of officially endorse Mike Johnson on the show, so go ahead.
I want to tell all the people that listen here, and I know you have 1,000, that I endorse Mike Johnson for Congress. He's a great guy. In fact, and I told him this, at first I thought, when I first met him, I think, this guy can't be like this. Nobody's like this. And I sat with him every day, there for 5 months. We were together every day, all day long. And he was just like that every day.
What do you mean just like that?
I'm talking about he believes in the Constitution. He believes in America. He believes in conservatism. The way you hear him talk and the things he says on television, I've heard it 1,000 times there on the House floor.
And and we know this, but I want you to say it to our listeners. He's not a one-issue candidate. You're going to miss him in Baton Rouge because of his financial mind, his way to dissolve conflicts. This is not a guy that's marginalized and only has a few friends. He's the guy that tries to get everybody to work together for a common good.
Mike's one of the smartest, and I know a lot of one of the smartest guys I know. If you want to get into a debate with somebody, don't do it with Mike. And it doesn't really matter what you debate because he's pretty good at it. Now, he is a constitutional scholar, and historically he knows a lot about the history of America, but he's pretty good at anything I've ever heard him talk about. He has some great ideas. The other thing I like about Mike is that Mike voted no on some things, but Mike had an answer. Mike said, well, no, I can't vote for that, but I do have this idea, let's do that. A lot of the others that voted no never had an answer. They just said, no, we're not going to do it. Well, that turns people off. Mike said, I got an answer. Hey, let's try this. Now, a lot of that didn't pass, but he at least tried. And I've got great respect for him for the things he did. I sat there with him, watched him. He sits about 3 seats in front of me, and I'm going to miss him. I don't have any doubt he's going to win the election. He deserves it. His wife and kids they have worked their rear off to try to get him that. And again, just to look at that, and we all raise children, how good a man he is to get his family to come out. I saw him walking up and down the road one day, and the little boy and his 2 little boys were out shaking hands with Mike, walking up and down the road.
Hands. Now, do you think he's going to be missed by everyone, including Barbara Norton? That was one of our callers told me to ask you that.
Barbara, and really it was funny the day it happened because Mike and Barbara were in an argument. And Mike says, Barbara, I love you. And Barbara said, I don't like you at all.
Larry, we're coming up on a break. We appreciate what you do in Baton Rouge. Safe travels home. Get home so you can spend some time with your family. And, again, thank you for your service. This is Mike Woods on the C.L. Bryant Show.
Ain't never seen the inside of that magazine, G.
Welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for CL, and Michelle and I are here in the studio, and it's getting a little colder outside, Michelle, and we're going to have some more cold weather.
And remember, I taught our listeners how to make snow. If it's 20 degrees outside, go outside with a spray bottle, fill it with water, and just start to mist the air.
And snow will come?
Well, we'll see. They can always call us and let us know. Take pictures.
All right. You know, we're talking about President-elect Trump earlier and some of the deals he's doing with Carrier and with Ford. Another item that's been in the news, Michelle, is his criticism of Boeing over the cost of the Air Force One. And of course, it is interesting to me the way the media continues to react, and the fact that the majority of them still don't get it, still don't realize that their opinion really didn't matter in the election. It really doesn't matter after the election, and they continue. And a prime example is Time making Trump the man of the year, and then turning around and slamming him for being pompous and whatever. But this Trump deal, and what a lot of folks don't realize, and you need to read The Art of the Deal from Donald Trump, Trump has wheeled and dealed all of his life. The reason he is successful, the reason he has put together a real estate empire, hotels, is because he negotiates with folks. And this is totally new. We've never had a president who will call somebody out and say, "Don't move your plant to Mexico. Carrier, you need to stay here." And now, you know, the cost estimate that the president has come up with for the new Air Force One is $4 billion. And of course, he's flying around in a pretty nice 767 that probably cost about $100 million. And granted, it's not equipped the way Air Force One is to protect the president. But, Michelle, what do you think about all of this? And
well, you know, he's got two new appointments that he made. Linda McMahon, she is, I'm thinking it's like wrestling, but she is appointed to be the SBA head.
Small Business Administration?
Yep. And I think it's she turned a small business into 800 employees, and it's WWE. And I'm thinking that's kind of it's very interesting. And so that's what she's going to be doing, and we're going to look more about her. And then Scott Pruitt is going to head EPA, which is what we've talked about a lot, which has a lot to do with what's happening in
North Dakota,
North Dakota,
elsewhere,
and in Louisiana.
Well, and interestingly enough, I'm looking at an article here. The Boeing CEO, Dennis Muilenburg, has now promised President-elect Trump in a phone call yesterday that the company will work to limit the cost of the new plane. So
what is that, though? Now, let's talk about what that is, because when they work to reduce the cost of the plane, will they lay off employees? Because that's how economics works. You have a product, you're going to sell it for $5, and then the guy says, "I've just got $2." So they've got to make up that difference.
Well, or they can actually look at the expenditures. I think, to me, what Mr. Trump has done is just tell Boeing, look, we're looking at the cost. Costs are important to us, and we are looking at what we're going to spend on this. So I don't want, you heard through the years of the toilet seat in the airplane that cost,
Right.
$88,000. And so I think he's basically just putting Boeing and others on notice. We're going to start worrying about what things cost. I mean, exactly what Larry Bagley was saying that they're doing on appropriations. Tell me, you saved this $500,000, but you want $400,000 more. What did you do with the $500,000 you just saved? And I will tell you, having been involved on the UL system board for years, there are so many ways you can save money in Louisiana. The state of Louisiana prohibits anyone from entering into a contract beyond 1 year time length. And for instance, Louisiana Tech, a school that's near and dear to you, Michelle, they generate their own electricity. They have to, every year, July 1, which is the state fiscal year, enter into a new contract to buy natural gas to generate electricity. And as we started looking at cost savings under then Chairman Pugh, we realized that the system as a whole was not buying natural gas as an entity. And the first year that we went in and bought natural gas for all of the 8 schools in the UL system, we saved $2 million because we had a bargaining position to go in. But if had we been able to enter into a contract beyond 1 year, and those times that natural gas has been low, which is recently, enter into a multi-year contract as SWEPCO and other energy providers do, and so there are some ways that the state does not incentivize anyone to save money. Whether it's a college or whatever, at the end of the year, if you have a surplus in your budget, you're supposed to give it back to the state. Well, guess what? Everybody's going to spend their money because they're not going to give money back to the state. So there are all sorts of ways that you can look if you ran the state as a business, but unfortunately, a lot of folks get elected and want to stay elected, and the way they stay elected is to provide benefits to their constituents, and so they don't really care what it costs to run the state government, and so that's one of the challenges that
Well, the interesting thing about Linda that's going to be running the Small Business Administration, and we'll have on next week some of our local chamber representatives to kind of talk about her appointment and what that means to small business. But it is wrestling. She took it says that she picks a wrestling magnet. Now he's had some connections with wrestlers and this wrestling organization.
Yeah, WWE. I'm not a big wrestling fan,
entertainment.
but
Myself either. I'm amazed that she was able to turn that around. And as a woman, talk about an interesting women empowerment. She's co-founder of pro wrestling company WWE. 68 years old, and she was a major Trump supporter and gave him $6 million. Interesting.
Well, it's again, and we were talking earlier that Trump's being criticized by some of his cabinet picks and some of the folks. He is surrounding himself with people who have been successful in business, and you've heard me say on the show earlier, FDR had over 92% of his cabinets and appointees were business folks. Obama has had only 8% of his business folks, the rest being policy wonks. So we're going to go back to the days of actually having business people who run business, who have been successful, who know what it's like to sign a paycheck and worry about a payroll. Be in charge and make decisions and hopefully unclutter, lower taxes, help those of us that are still crazy enough to do business here continue to thrive and prosper. And guess what? We then hire more people, we buy more goods, we spend money, automobiles, whatever. So it's gonna be an interesting time, folks. I can't wait. This is Mike Woods sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L. Bryant, and Michelle and I are sitting here in the studio. And you know, as we talk about President-elect Trump and his unconventional campaigning and his unconventional ideas, one of the things that he's promoting, you know, he's been extremely critical of the Federal Reserve and Janet Yellen. Of course, Janet Yellen has one more year of her term.
Now, is she elected or appointed?
She's appointed, and President-elect Trump will have, I believe, 2 appointees in 2018, and also will have the ability to appoint the Fed chair. But interestingly enough, in a conversation that he had recently with a former CEO of BB&T Bank, and is now part of the Cato Institute, they are talking about going back to the gold standard. And I know, Michelle, you aren't old enough to remember the gold standard.
I'm only 25.
Or silver certificates or any of that. But up until 1934, the value of the dollar was based on gold bullion at Fort Knox. And you could, in fact, the dollar was backed by gold bars.
You could actually go up to the door at Fort Knox with your dollar bill and ask for your little chip of gold. You know what they have there now at Fort Knox instead of gold?
Tanks.
They have CDs.
CDs.
Madonna, you know, old Michael Jackson CDs, Lady Gaga.
But the whole concept of going back to the gold standard is to do away with the Fed and their ability to manipulate the price of the dollar, or the value of dollar, because it will depend on the value of gold.
Well, not to get too heady, but so you're saying that the Fed determines the price of the dollar rather than gold. It used to be it represented gold. Why do you think it was based on gold?
Well, because gold was the universal standard of
a valuable commodity.
Of a valuable commodity.
And the price of gold, is that an international price? Like, obviously the pound or the dollar is different, but
the price of gold fluctuates every day, just as the value of the dollar fluctuates.
But it's still an international base price.
It's international base.
Like, if it's worth $5 for an ounce of it in China, then it translates to, you know, that equivalent into a pound in England.
Well, it's more like $1,200 an ounce right now.
Yeah,
but anyway, the idea has sound economic sense, and what President-elect Trump is saying, and what this bank president is saying, is that the Fed has artificially manipulated the price of the dollar by this quantitative easing.
But isn't that true, though? Isn't that an economic fact that they've artificially?
Well, they have, and in fact, some of the leading economists right now are saying the reason that the market is so artificially inflated is because of the Fed's cheap money policy. And now that we're getting ready to have we go into a Fed meeting next week, and everybody basically agrees that the Fed's going to raise interest rates.
So tell us about that meeting, because you've wanted to talk about that other times on the show. We never got to it. You're very concerned about that meeting. And another thing was you were excited to be host tonight because it's your first time since the election. Now, you were worried about this Fed meeting next week prior to the election. Now that Trump is president.
Well, the talking heads today are saying that the market rally has already taken into consideration a Fed rate hike, and we're talking about, folks, 0.25%. I mean,
and you're talking about prime rate,
which is 3.25 right now, or no, it's actually 3.5.
You better know exactly.
But
that's what you get paid the big bucks for.
I don't borrow money, so I don't know what the prime
interest
rate
is.
No,
so the prime rate is banks. They base their lending rate on prime rate.
On what the Fed charges them for
which
money.
is the Federal Reserve. You and y'all, your little slang there, the Federal Reserve. So a bank right now. But if you have a fixed rate loan, that means that that's not going to change regardless of the fluctuation of the prime rate.
Correct.
And in the 80s, we saw a lot of fluctuation with the economy.
Well, in the 80s, the early 80s, when I got out of law school, interest rates on a home loan were 18 to 21%.
Because Jimmy Carter had taken us into the stratosphere of high interest rates.
Well, he thought the world was coming to end. We were running out of oil,
But
and
they had our hostages and weren't giving them back.
but we got them back.
We got
didn't
them back, and we won the hockey in the Winter Olympics. And let's not forget
and
that.
beat the Russians.
And beat the Russians. And that was the beginning of a new day.
But the Fed is in control of monetary policy, and back to getting to the gold standard, what some economists contend is that if we just eliminated the Fed and allowed the U.S. dollar to be pegged to the price of gold, then we would not be artificially inflating interest rates. We wouldn't artificially be inflating. We wouldn't have the bubble in the market that we have now. So it's going to be interesting as we go into the Fed meeting next week and to see exactly the.
Now, why would they want to raise the interest rate next week?
Well, what has happened, especially to senior adults on fixed income, is that for the last 15 years we have artificially held rates down, and so if you're someone retired and a CD rate, you can't even get 1% on your CD. So if you have your money in CDs at the bank, with inflation, you're going backwards every year.
Now, back in 1980 and 81, when those rates were at 18%,
you were blowing
that's right.
and going.
But you've got people that make more money by reducing the CD rate and say, take your money, invest with me. And those people are on Wall Street.
Well, and of course you have all kind of ramifications for home builders as interest rates go up. We've seen interest rates go up since President Trump was elected because of the concern in the bond market. I mean, Treasury have gone up almost 1%, and so a lot of mortgage rates are tied to Treasury bonds.
And all this is making no sense to our listeners.
Well,
but so you're expecting the interest rate to go up next week. You're going to be here next week, so we're going to monitor this. We're talking about the gold standard because we have a friend, Ralph Benko, who is the national expert on the gold standard. He couldn't be with us tonight. He's going to be with us next week. And Donald Trump is talking about wanting to possibly go back to the gold standard. And this is not a conversation we can have in 5 minutes because the effect on our economy would be vast.
No question. It would change the way we do business in America. This is Mike Woods. I'm sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back after the break.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L. And tonight we've been talking about the upcoming inauguration of President-elect Trump and the enthusiastic response that he's gotten in his thank you tour that he's going back. We have on the phone, and Ali, you and I have talked before. Ali Akbar is a black conservative, and appreciate you being on the show.
We have, and thanks for having me. It's an exciting time in our country.
Who would have ever thought?
I know. I certainly didn't. I know I was sitting there at our election night watch party with all of our friends and colleagues, and even 2 hours in, I was uncertain that he was going to be able to pull this off. But he attracted those Rust Belt voters that he went after, and he pulled off something that hasn't been done in a very, very long time.
Well, I ended up staying up all night long at 2:00. When the AP announced that he had won Pennsylvania, I was still waiting for Fox and the others to announce it, and I thought, well, if AP call it, it's probably good. And I went and got in bed, and after 10 minutes, I realized I'm not going to go to sleep, so I got back up and stayed up the rest of the night.
Well, what do you think about these recounts, Ollie? Do you think they're going to amount to anything?
I think it's awesome. I think that if this is how liberals want to spend their money on recounts in states where we know that Donald Trump won instead of for Foster Campbell in Louisiana, I think that's a great thing. And I think that all these special elections that are going to happen in January and February after Trump officially nominates these people and they get confirmed, like Dr. Tom Price, who's a friend out of Georgia, he's a congressman who's going to be leading Health and Human Services. Those are special elections that Democrats are going to want to fight in. So if they want to waste $7 to $10 million fighting an uphill battle against the law and against the voters, I say more power to them.
But you know what
and
also?
You know what?
Well, I was going to say in Michigan, the voters in Michigan are mad because it's also costing them much needed dollars in a state that has no good drinking water, no jobs, and you're wanting us to pay Michigan taxpayer dollars wasted on this.
Yeah, there's no substitute for winning, and now the left has returned to its natural state of chaos. And Michigan's a state where over 90,000 people chose not to vote. They chose to vote, but not vote for the presidential line of the ballot. This is clearly a state that rejected the normal politics, that rejected Obama's third term. Some of them weren't fine with voting for Donald Trump, but I think that this is more of an indictment on the system that the Clintons built than anything. And so I think that they ought to respect the will of the people, but I love any opportunity to demonstrate the left's pure disdain for, the great American experiment.
Well, and it's been interesting to me as we've gone through and seen Nancy Pelosi reelected as the Democratic minority leader, and her two lieutenants that are both in their 70s. I saw last night that Joe Biden says, well, he may now run in 2012. Which I believe he'll be, 78? He'll be older than me, Michelle. I mean,
well, I think you're 90, but yeah.
So, they keep doing the same stupid things over and over again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If they want to be the party of rich old white people commanding disgruntled minorities who are stuck in a system that they built, again, more power to them. I, as a constitutional conservative, somebody who supported Ted Cruz during the primary, somebody who, was very hesitant towards coming towards the Trump train, I've been very pleasantly surprised because I don't think that America has had a better cabinet than the one that's coming in. And
is it diverse enough to you? I mean, do you think it looks like he's picking the best people for the job?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be an interesting administration. Would I love to have, more black conservatives up there? Absolutely. But I'll tell you this, the RNC and the Trump transition team has put out an all-call, any black Republican that wants to go work for our federal government, is going to have a job with our federal government. I think that that's tremendous. I think that he's nominating very, very qualified people. We're going to have 2 retired generals, Marines, leading 2 of the departments. I think that is very powerful, especially as we go through this kind of reformation as a country, as we kind of take back what it means to be America. I think that we ought to have these Marines leading some of that on that agenda. Our education secretary is going to be a powerful Republican conservative donor based out of Michigan. She's a pioneer in school choice. I mean, it's going to be really, really exciting to be American again.
It's been interesting to me, Ali, the criticism of Dr. Carson. And you know, of course, they immediately attacked all of Trump's appointees as racist,
Yes.
but they couldn't call Dr. Carson a racist, so now they just say, well, he's just incompetent.
Yeah, you know, absolutely fascinating. Like, you know, these departments are filled with career government bureaucrats. There's several, you know, career-oriented deputies that will be there to assist Dr. Carson as he leads this giant department, you know, with HUD. But, you know, fundamentally, Carson has what we need at HUD, and that's somebody who wants to take people out of government housing, who wants to list them out. No one is going to kick these people out of housing. What we're going to try to do is liberate them. And Dr. Carson shares that vision that Trump shares, that the Republican Party platform
Ali, we're
shares.
coming up on a break,
Yeah.
and we're having so much fun with you. Can you hang out and discuss this just a few more minutes with us?
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you. This is Mike Wood sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. This is Mike Wood sitting in for CL, and I've got Michelle in the studio, and we have Ali Akbar from Baton Rouge, a black young conservative, on the phone. And Ali, we were talking a little bit about the Trump phenomenon and implications. Let's talk a little bit about implication and about immigration and what we have to look forward to under President-elect Trump.
I think that we're going to see our borders secured. I think that this will be, a promise that people have been waiting for since we felt a little betrayed by Reagan. But I think that we've always been a compassionate people. And here's what I think that the left misses. If the left really put their ear to the ground on the conservative movement, they would actually listen to what Rush Limbaugh or Eric Erickson or many leaders in the conservative movement stand for. A lot of us are actually for a path to legalization, but that should be a limited path. It should include some type of punitive damages. It should include background check and vetting. It should have a zero tolerance policy for criminal, drug, and violent offenses. It should mainly be concentrated towards families and students and people who came here by no will of their own. And, but the left, they hear, let's secure the border, let's let in no immigrants. And Republicans and conservatives have never been for that. So I think that if Donald Trump gets to execute his wish, which is to build the wall and then have the conversation about who gets to stay and who must leave, then we're going to be a better off country. And maybe the left will take a chill pill for a moment and realize we're not the big bad devils they've made us out to be.
Well, and Trump has already said that he's going to try to work something out for illegal immigrants who came as children. So I mean, he's he's already not softening, but he's being realistic about what to do with the illegal immigration situation. I've been curious, and it's interesting that on the nightly news they show the parade of people who are going to Trump Tower, and of course Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel's been there, the Attorney General Scott Pruitt, who's going to be the EPA head, has been there. And even I'm an OU grad. Even Barry Switzer went up, and he said, "I've been here to interview for the Secretary of Offense. Donald plans to run with the ball, and I know how to run with the football." So it's been interesting watching the cast of characters that are going through Trump Tower and all the reaction of the press.
Well, let me ask you this real quick, Ali. What do you think about Secretary of State?
That's an interesting position because, as a guy who doesn't come naturally to Trump, but I love a lot of what he's doing. I love that he's putting the media on defense. I agree with Mike. I mean, we're about to see the first Republican ever, maybe since Lincoln, run a purely offensive game against the opposition. And, Secretary of State position, I think that we owe it to President-elect Trump to let him pick somebody who shares or espouses his worldview. But we as the nation also want someone who is immensely qualified and carries the dignity and the weight that the American people do.
So you're talking about Mitt Romney. So you're saying Mitt Romney.
I'm saying Mitt Romney if Mitt Romney is on the same page with Trump. But under no uncertain circumstances do many conservatives want Rudy up there, who is a great Republican, would have made a great attorney general, but boxed himself out of that position, angling for this position.
Right, and I'm a Rudy fan, but I don't think he has the skill set. I had removed my Romney tattoo from 2012 because I was all on board with that because he acted crazy during this campaign. But if you read The Art of the Deal, which we talked about earlier, Chapter 1, page 6, Donald Trump talks about somebody he appointed to something that he had fought with during the Koch administration in New York. Fights are not new to him, but he said, I don't care that I fought with this guy, and he said all kinds of bad things about me. He's the most qualified for the job. And you just described, and you and I didn't talk about this beforehand, I'm all about Romney because it's just what you said, that he represents us. He's dignified. CL and I talked about it on the air, and CL wanted another general, and I just busted up laughing. I go, CL, when you have a general...
3 might be too many.
Yeah, right? That's what I said. It's like, we're not going to be hostile. I mean, we're going to try to make friends. You got an army for that, but let's send somebody who's a peacemaker but who's smart. And I think that, and I honestly, this is what my prediction is, CL was telling me last night he thinks it's Huntsman. I'm like, Huntsman is
No.
Romney light, okay? That's all that
Yeah.
Huntsman is. And I'm like, I think that Trump is backing off of this to let things cool down because he is a deal maker and he knows that things cool down. And 2 weeks from now, when he says Mitt Romney, no one's going to care the way that they do now. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, and he has the uncanny knack, and we were talking about this earlier during the break. There are some people who I've been around who have been successful that may not be an expert on this or that, but they're good at choosing people to work for him. And obviously Donald Trump, for the empire that he has put together, is awfully good at picking the right folks to run things. And so I'm with you, Ali. I'm not concerned over who he's going to pick because I think in the end it's going to be the right person for the job.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. I mean, he's a great headhunter. He's an executive, and even with the man who's about to lead the EPA, as you mentioned, the Attorney General of Oklahoma. Yes. Pruitt gave $2,700 to Jeb Bush and gave $0 to Trump, even in the general. And look, he's the EPA head. I think that the media is totally missing. I mean, they're just missing everything. It's almost fantastic how often they could be wrong, because if they flipped the coin, they'd be right 4 times as many, right? It's 4 times as much. But they think that, we're evil. They think that Trump is going to be vindictive. They think Trump wants to stay in power. And that means that there's a seat somewhere for Cruz, there's a seat somewhere for Romney, and, Trump wants to go down as the greatest American.
There you go, Ali. We're coming up on the break. We appreciate your thoughts and comments. Ali Akbar from Baton Rouge. This is Mike Woods sitting in for C.L. Bryant. We'll be back.
The sky is crying. Cannons and the tears roll down the street.
Welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show. This is Mike Woods sitting in for C.L. Bryant. Michelle, I just see coming across the wire that a federal judge has halted the recount in Michigan.
That's right. And, we had Mike Johnson on last night talking about that with the National Committee woman there in Michigan. And the Trump campaign and the Attorney General of Michigan went to court and said to the judge, hey, wait a minute. Jill Stein cannot be a person bringing this claim. Explain that to us, because you're an attorney.
Well, the concept is called standing. You have to have standing to bring a lawsuit. And we talked about it earlier. The fact that Michigan is now, as you pointed out earlier, can't even
they don't have clean water. They have nothing.
This was a $5 million recount tab.
$5 million.
And so the lawyer urged the federal judge not to stick the taxpayers with this tab, and the federal judge on Wednesday halted the hand recount of the 4.8 million ballots, and they're saying obviously there's going to be another appeal, but
but somebody needs to tell Jill Stein to knock it off. This is not reality TV, people. She's not turning a table over for Lifetime. Okay, this is about people and money.
But Michelle, you've got the left now, because they've lost and they're mad about it. They're doing everything in their power to try to just throw a wrench into the.
Ali said it best, but why aren't they focusing on some races here in Louisiana?
Because they don't get it.
Because they think that there's no hope that the Democrats going to beat Mike Johnson on Saturday. No hope at all that a man who's never run for or held office, done any community service in any way, should even be running for Congress. That's what the Democrat operatives have been telling us. They're not interested in this race. How embarrassing to be running against Mike Johnson.
And Foster Campbell as well. The Democratic Senatorial Committee has not put any money into his Senate race. So
And you've publicly endorsed Mike Johnson, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I was with Mike from the very beginning. I gave Mike money when he ran first for state house, and he is the only congressional candidate that I've given money to.
So then why do you
time.
think he would make a great congressman? I mean, a lot of people try to say he's just a one-issue guy.
No, Mike's in it for all the right reasons. Unfortunately, we have a lot of politicians who run for the wrong reasons. Mike is in it for the right reasons, and he's going to be our next congressman.
Now, you also got Jim McCurry elected, so getting congressman elected is something you're used to doing.
I was involved in Jim McCurry's campaign from early on, was his finance chairman the 20 years that he was in Washington, and I think we will have just a good, if not better, a congressman with Mike Johnson as we did with Jim McCurry. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. This is Mike Woods. I had the privilege of sitting in CL's chair tonight, and I always appreciate that opportunity. I will be back next week for a few nights as CL continues to travel, doing good things for Freedom Works. I want to thank all the veterans, and see you next week.